Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Outlander Season 1, Episode 1. It's called Sassenach, and we'll start spoiler free because it is a Episode 1 review.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's not a new Episode 1 review. I mean, obviously this debuted in 2014.
It's new to us, so that's what matters.
But in case you do want a sense of what we feel about the episode before we start getting into plot details, then that's fine. Obviously, a lot of this is just a premise, as a lot of Episode 1s tend to be. But with Better Call Saul ending, we decided we wanted to fill that slot with just working through a show. And we've got a few potentials, and we decided to try Outlander first. So we'll decide at the end of this review if we want to continue a bit more and say do half the season. The reason why it's half the season and not the whole of the season because the season's 16 episodes and it aired in 2 halves of 8. So the 8 feel like a good sample size, and we should probably know by episode 8 if we want to commit to doing the rest of the show or not. So that's what we're going to do. So we'll decide if we're going to make it to that point at the end of this review. But this is a show based on a book series, and it is developed by Ronald D for TV. It's a STARZ show, and it's about an English nurse in 1945, just after the end of the Second World War, who, after a little bit of setup, which is a good half of this episode, I would say, is sent back in time to the 1700s, so is it?
I believe so, yeah.
And in Scotland, and kind of, you know, so this first episode is just the start of her adventure in that time period, but that is the premise of the show. So we'll get into it, give her feelings and whatnot. I will say that when I revealed on stream to a bunch of our audience what we're going to be trying this show, a good few of them said outright they expected me to hate it.
I did. I mean, when we were talking about this, we did consider that there's a strong possibility that you might, because of it, just the general period pieciness of it. But, you know, there's some creatives involved that we thought, well, maybe it's worth a try.
Yeah, and Tara also said the same thing. I mean, she's not seen the show, but as soon as I mentioned it, she's like, "You're going to hate that," and I'm like, "Yeah, we'll see,
Yeah,
we'll give it a try." So yeah, I mean, this first episode, you know, it spends a good half, probably a bit more than half of the episode, just sort of like, okay, this is where we are with her before she travels in time, and you know, her status quo. We meet her husband, her relationship with him, sets up some stuff, kind of establishes her role as a nurse in the Second World War. And that's a skill set which is invariably going to come in handy in the harsh.
You would think so, wouldn't you?
The harsh battlefield of the 1700s. So yeah, I guess I'll just ask the question straight out. Right, the premise is out the way. Connor, what did you think of episode 1 of Outlander?
I probably liked it more than I was expecting. I think because I'm also very hit or miss with period pieces. I don't have quite the strong reaction that you usually do, but they're not my go-to. And this episode is definitely not perfect, but there's a lot I can kind of wave away as just, you know, pilot problems more than anything inherent in the show. So yeah, I think I liked it more than I expected I was gonna.
Do you know what I think's interesting about the it being in 1945 and then she travels back in time to the 1700s? Is that it oddly started to make me feel like 1945 was the present day. Like, it's a weird feeling, but it was kind of this thing where when she goes back and she references some things in front of the older, you know, the time period characters who don't understand what a germ is, for example. I'm like, yeah, germs, yeah, we know what these are because we're from the future. And then I went, wait, you're from 1945? I'm so much more advanced than you.
Yeah, like going back to World War II is, you know, it's a pretty common time travel thing, right? At this point, from, you know, our current-ish present day.
Yeah, I mean, we're not
World War II. That's pretty staggering leaps of technology that, you know, you can befuddle quite a few people.
And we're not quite there yet, but we're not that far away from the 100 years mark on that. You know, another decade and a half, and we're going to be talking about the 100th anniversary of the start of the Second World War. You know, so. Yep. We're moving quite swiftly on from it, but obviously they still have cars, they have electricity, they have some basics that we consider
it's pretty recognizable to us.
Yeah, but you go back to the 1700s, and you know, part of me was like, oh, they do have guns. Like, I had to think. I was like, oh yeah, of course they do.
Oh
like,
God, okay, your history knowledge is terrible.
To be fair, I was expecting it because I just watched Prey and they had guns in that as well.
Okay, they've had guns for a long time.
When did guns come out of the picture?
I know they had like muskets with gunpowder, like you're talking like 1400s.
Okay. Well, that's the thing. Technology is going.
You had cannons against castles, right? Which was
sure. That's the thing, though. Technology is obviously constantly, the rate is going quicker and quicker as it goes on. So, with how slow things are, yeah. When you look at like certain time periods of the past, it's like, oh, the guns were invented, and then it was just those standard things for like centuries before they improved to anything else. Like so. It's like I never know get into these old time periods what I'm expecting.
Napoleon was like the 1800s, and that was around the Napoleonic Wars as kind of the invention of the rifle as opposed to the musket.
Okay. So 1800s is when it upgraded properly, because here it's still, I'm pretty sure it's still a musket here.
I would assume so.
Yeah. But not everyone has them. Some of the it doesn't seem like a lot of the Scottish clans and stuff. They don't seem to have firearms to the same extent. Whereas all the red shirts, literally red shirts in this case.
Well, red coats in this case, coats. But yeah.
I'm calling them red shirts. They're the evil villains. The English in this are the evil villains of the show. Come on.
Oh, you're loving this. I was watching this and I'm like, God damn it. I can feel myself being the token Englishman already.
I mean, to be fair, the main character is an Englishwoman. You're represented.
She is. But everyone else, more or less, in this show is going to be Scottish. At least right now. In terms of good characters.
Yeah. So anyway, how did I feel about the first episode? I didn't think it was torture. I mean, I'll get that out of the way. Like, people seem to think I was going to be in pain trying to watch this. I do think like some of the narration and stuff feels a little like it's going for a tone that I'm not necessarily in love with.
See, that's a lot of my problem as well, but there's a lot of it that I can maybe think that might be just piloty.
I think, when I say I don't like period piece stuff, and I hate stuff like Bridgerton and stuff, like people just, I think, assume that I'm going to see old clothes and stuff like that and instantly be like, oh, I hate this. It tends to be how the shows write their stories and what they focus on. And that's not to say that this will definitely not go down to some paths I don't like. There's clearly some romance stuff that they're going to be doing. But I like, typically if you focus on the characters well enough and you introduce us into the worlds well enough, like if I'm sort of getting attached to the concepts and the characters, like I'm fine. Like it doesn't really matter when or where it's set. For every for every 10 period things that I might not like, there are stuff that I do like. Like I still, I mean,
can you think of any?
I mean, the most relevant one to this maybe Braveheart. I mean, that's a period piece.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Gladiator's a period piece.
Yeah.
I like that.
Braveheart's definitely closest to this, yeah.
Well, obviously, because it's literally Scottish stuff, but
yeah.
So like it comes and goes. It just depends on the approach and how it's handled. And don't get me wrong, yeah. Like I would say that much like with westerns, I would say that there is more that I don't like than I do like. But when it hits just fine. Yeah. I don't necessarily think that's much of a problem per se. I think if I had any other critiques of this episode, I can, the narration's a little bit like, it wants to sound like a book. Like, you can tell it's based on a book because it wants to sound like it's got like a book style narrator.
It does feel like they've just lifted narration off the page and gone, here you go, read this.
Yeah. And some of it felt a bit like overwritten, like in the way that it would be in a book. Like the episode opens with her talking about this vase. I've never owned a vase before, and like it made me imagine the life that I would have where I'd own such an object. And I'm like, okay, all right. So it's a bit frilly, I guess, I'd say.
Yeah.
The other thing is that it's STARZ, so there has to be like more runch than it needs to have. I felt that a couple of times.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But again, I don't know if that's a case of like there's a bit more because it's the first episode and they're just like playing it up to get people in. But also, like I say, it is STARZ, so that might just continue.
Yeah, because the first time like her and her husband have sex, it's done in this kind of like fun way that's kind of sweet and like. It's sort of a jokey tone to it because it's sort of like, the person downstairs can hear the bed creaking and it just sort of smells like married couple, whatever. But then a few scenes later, there's a scene where it's like, I'm going to show you my stockings and you're going to get down and like eat me out in the middle of this like abandoned old castle. Like, all right. It started to become like it was trying to be titillating as opposed to just it's establishing their attraction to each other and their romance and their love and so on. So it's a minor thing. It's not a big deal. Like you move on quite quickly from it. But it did stick out as like, oh, this I could feel STARZ just like mandating this.
I get it because we've spoiled this before. A lot of the STARZ and Showtime, and even HBO to an extent, feel like there's a mandate at times. Like no,
it does at times.
You get the skin quota in, and I will say, well, this has quite a few instances of it. But I will say, I don't think any of the scenes last too long. Like in some other shows I've seen, they go on a long time. Where you're like, come on, all right, I'm bored now.
I think HBO gets more of a pass to an extent because they've made more prestigious things that have like all the acclaim. That I think STARZ and Showtime feel kind of the trashier channels
in comparison to HBO. Yes, yeah.
So I think that's why it sticks out, and I sort of noticed it a bit more. But yeah, I thought the character was likable. Claire's our main character. I think she comes off likable enough. She's strong, she's independent, she's very modern. Certainly for 1945 standards, which means for 1700 standards, she's like, I
think she comes alive when it's in the 1700s. Like the stuff with her playing off of those characters, and seeing their reactions to her being a modern woman by our standards, even. That stuff plays really well.
Yeah, so certainly by the 40 standards at the very least.
Oh, sure, but even by ours, it's not like she's that bad, right?
Oh, no. I don't mean that in that sense. I just mean in the sense that, like, obviously for 1945, she's this woman who's been a nurse in the Second World War. She's very conditioned. She's smart. She's, like, I think... Obviously, these are all things you could then translate to a modern character quite easily, but I think part of the point of this transition to the 1700s is that what feels kind of more acceptable and normal in 1940s all of a sudden feels like, oh, she sticks out a lot in the 1700s. Yeah. I think likewise, if you took a character from present day and put her in 1945, when she comes from, she would stick out as being far more independent and like forward thinking than the characters are ready to accept is my point. Like I'm saying there's still a difference from the 40s to now, obviously.
Oh, there is, yeah.
But anyway, she does kind of come alive, and it's kind of like, if you're waiting for like the plot to kick in to get excited, I do think the episode is more interesting once the time travel itself happens. That's to say that I don't think there's anything of value in that first chunk. I think it's like I sort of like, I wasn't really thinking about it as a time travel show at first, but then I was like, oh wait a minute, a lot of this stuff they're talking about is clearly setting up stuff she's going to run into when she goes back in time.
Like at that first, I think it's probably like 2/3 of the episode, give or take. You're kind of like waiting for it, like you're waiting for the time travel. You're like, okay, where's this going? And how's it go? The how maybe will be more relevant at some point. But you're kind of like, okay, where what's the driving force of this? And I don't think it's gonna. It doesn't feel like it's gonna be super interesting answering that straight away.
No, I feel like it will get to that question eventually, but I don't think it's going to be something like. I think she'll question it when she can finally talk to someone about it, but it won't actually really be like any tangible kind of answer or lead to that answer is going to even materialize for a while, I would say.
Yeah.
There is a couple of sort of tease things in the first episode that obviously might come up later this season, or maybe like a long-term thing, just some stuff that will be explained later when we've got more of the story and stuff like that. But this is always something you get with time travel, though, where there's these seeds where it's like, is that because someone's like experienced it all already and like is like here in the context of knowing something, or whatever. You probably know what moment I'm talking about as I'm dancing around it.
But even just in a more general sense, there's a lot of stuff with her husband talking about his, the reason they're in Scotland in the first place is he's really interested in his ancestry, and he's looking at a specific ancestor from, would you believe it, the 1700s.
And they're going to
this area.
Yeah, different sites that he might have been at, and he's talking to people about the records to explain, was he stationed here? And of course, like, in the present day of 1945 sense, it's like, okay, yeah, like, he was one of the redcoats, and everyone here that's helping him is obviously descendants of Scottish people, presumably. I mean, maybe the families moved in or out, whatever, it doesn't really matter. But the point is that it doesn't matter that they were on opposite sides back in the 1700s, because that's all old history now, it doesn't matter. But of course, when she goes back in time, like, all of a sudden, like, there's combat.
It matters.
Yeah. It matters heavily.
like, because her husband is a historian, so it makes sense for him to be interested in things, and he is talking about it very scholarly ish.
Yeah, yeah.
It's interesting, and it is interesting things from a historical perspective, right? You know, I get that, but you in the back of your head, you can kind of see the gears churning of like, oh, okay, this is establishing some of the things that we're going to be seeing in the past, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think he said he's almost about to become a professor. Is kind of what they set up in this episode, and he's obviously doing fairly well because I imagine having a car in 1945 means you're not poor. I would guess.
They mentioned, cause obviously they've both been serving in the war in different departments. They haven't really been together for the last few years.
Yeah, they've been separated. I think she says they've spent maybe 10 days total together in the last 5 years.
Yeah, they mention at one point he wrote a letter directly for the minister, which implies that he was doing something relatively important.
Oh yeah, she mentions at one point he was doing like covert, like he was the one sending out covert people behind enemy lines and stuff.
Yeah, and reporting to the minister. So I would assume he was reasonably high up.
Yeah, so and maybe his family stature is what got him that kind of role, and that's why he is well off or whatever. But
it's very possible, yeah.
So yeah, they set up him, and they set up her. They set up their relationship and how they're relatively healthy and they're sort of reconnecting. There's some questions that are raised, but it's not like they're feeling awkward with each other necessarily.
No, it's like, hey, we've been kind of apart for the last few years. We've both had very different experiences. We're obviously different people than we were 5 years ago. We kind of got to get to know each other a bit more again. Actually,
interesting little thing, and it's not necessarily like, I don't want to put this point too strongly, but I do think it's a neat little way of like showing her place in 1945. Is the episode opens with, other than her looking at the vase, we cut to 1945. It's the end of the war, and she's like treating a soldier whose legs like messed up, and she's like, saying this, saying that. But eventually in the scene, like a doctor comes up and says, "That's okay, nurse. Like, I'll take it from here," kind of thing. And obviously, he's not doing anything wrong. She's a nurse, he's a doctor. But I do think it's kind of interesting in 1945. She's still kind of like, "Oh, you're off to the side now because the man's now here to do it." I think that's very intentional because then when she goes, it's going to be even more extreme when she goes back to the 1700s.
It is, but then, unsurprisingly, she's the only one with a lot of the knowledge in the 1700s.
Oh, she has way more knowledge than any of them do when she goes back.
Understandably, so like any of us would have basic knowledge that even without any training.
Yeah.
The majority of people from that time.
Yeah, the main thing in this episode is just the idea of using alcohol to clean the wound. Like we both know that, and we
she asked for like iodine and stuff, which again is something really common and then basic that we would think of. Clean your wounds with something first.
Yeah.
And they're like, what the hell are you on about? Why?
Yeah, so I think that's like a really just interesting way to set up your themes. Like, yeah, we're going to be dealing a lot with how she's treated in this different time period when she goes back, because they're not going to be ready for a woman who is sure of herself and like knows things and to an extent starts barking orders because she's taking like the treatment of someone's injury seriously. So it is interesting to see that.
I expect there'll be a lot played with how much will she go along with, all right, okay, I need to fit in and kind of try and get accepted and play the role a little bit, and how much will she just be like, no, I know shit, I'm doing this, and kind of be a bit, quite outspoken like she actually is.
Yeah, I'm not so sure, timeline wise or like how much this was also a thing like in this part of the world, but like my first thought was some people are going to think she's a witch. Like when she starts doing things with flowers and shit, like some people might think she's a witch and just try and kill her.
100%.
So, that's a concern. Like that's a reason why she might want to like play dumb, like here or there, selectively. So, no, it's interesting. I do appreciate that a reasonable amount of the actors do seem to have authentic accents. We're not dealing with a lot of, like English actors playing Scottish characters and vice versa. I'm sure there's some like smaller
and if they
ones,
but they at least so far they're doing a good job with their accents.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure a guy named Graham McTavish. He sounds like he's probably authentic.
he might be Scottish, yeah.
He might be Scottish. Oh, born in Glasgow, Scotland. Look at that. Fancy
Shocking.
That. That's the bald one. That's the sort of leader of the clan.
Yeah, the older one.
Yeah. Yeah.
He looks like a McTavish.
He does. He really does.
That is the least surprising name you could have thrown out for him.
I actually, funnily enough, I wasn't so sure. So the main guy, when she goes back in time, Jamie, he's played by Sam Heughan. And the name sounds Scottish enough, but like his accent wasn't as strong. So I was like, oh, I wonder if that's like an English actor doing like a decent Scottish accent. But no, sure enough, he's from Galloway or New Galloway in Scotland.
He might just have a softer accent, or maybe he spent time away. I mean, like, your accent's not particularly strong, and you've lived in Scotland your whole life.
No, that's true. But I mean, it's the sort of thing where you're not necessarily like I intentionally just I'm not a big guy who likes slang. Like I'm just not that into doing it. So inherently, I have less of a strong. I mean, it's almost like a weird thing where I would say it's not that I don't have a strong accent. It's that I just don't use like local colloquialisms.
You have a soft dialect.
Yeah, soft dialect. That's a better way of putting it.
Yeah.
But it's just that thing though. Like the UK, both in England and Scotland, are very diverse in terms of accents. Where you only have to travel, maybe 20 miles, and all of a sudden you've got a completely different accent.
I grew up 17 miles away from Birmingham.
You don't sound remotely from me.
Not even close.
So, it's just one of those weird things. Yeah, I saw someone do a quiz on Scottish food recently, actually, and I was like shocked that I only knew like a third of them, and it's just because the country's so diverse. Like if you travel to different parts of the country, you'll find completely different things.
Occasionally you'll mention something like a food item that's Scottish, and you probably don't even realize that it's Scottish. I'm like, I have no idea what the hell that is.
Oh yeah, there's stuff where I'm not sure if something's Scottish or British, and vice versa all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's just that plays into this a little bit. But it was nice to have the authentic accents. I laughed a little bit when the episode started because it opens on like a really sort of like shot. It's a shot of flowers in a field or something like that, and it's like the Highlands or something. And like immediately there's some bagpipes, and I just started giggling because I'm like, all right, okay. We couldn't have built up to the bagpipes. We had to just go for it from the first second.
Set that mood immediately. just establish this is what we're doing. This is what the show is.
Oh dear. So yeah, I did get a chuckle as it went on, realizing, all the Scottish characters are the good guys in this, and the English are all the bad guys. And I sort of thought, I'm going to enjoy talking about this. I think a little bit.
I thought you might.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, historically, the English were kind of awful. I mean, you think the Scots had it bad? Ugh, you should look at the Welsh.
Oh, well, they were nearer. Kind of. You know what I mean?
Their name, like Wales, like that's an English name for them. That basically means outsider or other, I think.
But speaking of, let's get to the title of the episode, which actually means Outlander, because they mention early on that we don't see this scene. He's talking to like the Scottish Reverend that he's speaking to, and he mentions that like one of the locals called us this last night, and he says that don't be too offended. It just means not Scottish, or at worst Outlander, which is obviously the title of the show, and it sets up because that's the thing. It's got a double meaning. Not only is she English in Scotland, but she's also from 1945, so she's in many ways the Outlander, and that's kind of the point. Yeah, obviously.
But it's not necessarily like derogatory or offensive.
No,
it's just a statement of fact almost.
Yeah,
it can be.
Yeah, I suspect it wasn't that meant that maliciously. Not that some drunk Scottish people won't say some horrible things to an English person if they hear an accent.
They've never done that, have they?
Hey, it happens the other way around too. Let's not pretend that it doesn't.
You find one example where I have been drunk and slandered a Scottish person.
I never said you. You do slander me sober all the time, you prick.
I said one example.
I'll give you 50.
I said one. Pick one.
You realize they're all recorded, right? Like people can go look at everything we've ever done and hear them all.
But they won't. And not all of them. Some of them are off air.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, what else to say before we go to spoilers? I would say I'm intrigued to see how she fits into this world. Obviously, we get a taste of it this first episode and these first encounters, but obviously it's only a slither compared to what we're going to, because this is what the show's going to be now. as far as I know, we're not going to be cutting back to 1945 and seeing her husband go, "Oh, where did my wife go? Where is she?" Like,
no, I can see like flashbacks still to like the war to be for relevant situations, and maybe some, especially when because let's get started. There is going to be some romance in the past, right?
I'm fairly certain I know who we're with as well.
Yeah, me too. I would not be surprised to see like flashbacks to like earlier stages of the relationship with her husband and kind of just see some of those parallels.
Yeah, I could see some flashbacks for her. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
I think as much as I wasn't super into the narration per se, I do appreciate that she never outright said the phrase time travel, because I was thinking about how maybe someone in 1945, it's not like, maybe they'll talk about if you could travel to another time, but I don't know if the concepts of time travel, because we've had so many movies, there's been so many TV shows. I mean, and books.
Yeah, like the concept of like a time machine definitely was around, because that's like early 1900s, right?
Yeah, H.G. Wells, yeah.
Yeah, that's like 1905.
Even before that, though, I assume people still occasionally the topic of conversation, if you could go back to another time period, probably came up, right? It's not like
even now it's still hypothetical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I feel like when it happens in like something set present day, characters in those shows or movies or books, they know what time travel is in a conceptual level, right? They've seen fictional stories of it, so it's kind of the same argument of like in a zombie movie, like why do they do what do they know what a zombie is already, or is it a new thing to them in that world? In zombie movies, I'd say skew towards they don't know what it is usually, not always, but I'd say it's like 60-40 in that direction.
It is, and it's always, at least for me personally, slightly jarring, like because I'm supposed to accept this is a world exactly like ours, except there was never anything zombie related to give them this concept.
I'm honestly mixed on it, because I think some of my favorites don't use the word zombie, and admittedly, to be fair, I'm thinking of like the original like trilogy of the dead, which is kind of what created the modern zombie. So maybe it's not fair to use them as an example.
Yeah, that's a little bit different.
I don't know. On the one hand, it's like, I think when you have characters bringing up the word zombie, it immediately makes it feel a little bit more goofy, because like they know what a zombie is, so they know all the rules already, so it's kind of weird. Whereas when they don't, and it's a completely new thing, it feels more scary and intimidating as a result. Fair. So I think that's why a lot of them choose not to do it.
I get the choice, and I'm not saying it's a wrong choice or even a bad choice. And I say it might even make a better movie. But just on a personal level, there's always a slight disconnect for me.
Yeah. So anyway, I got to that because I kind of appreciated that she didn't necessarily have phrases that she could go to explain what this was. She just, it was a bit frilly the way she said it. It was like, oh, turns out tomorrow wasn't as important as yesterday was. It's a bit frilly book language kind of thing, but it was a little bit different. Yeah. And there is one scene that I was kind of like just shrugging at, like in the early half, when they're at the Reverend's house, and I think it's the Reverend's wife who's
the tea leaves reading.
Yeah, like reading the tea leaves and the palm and stuff. Like, this was all just like wink, wink. This is hinting at all the plots to come, kind of stuff.
I think there was one kind of nice part of that, which was early on. The husband talks about how for some reason he would draw the lines of her palm, like that pattern. Like, for whatever reason, that was just something he did, while they were separated during the war. That was one of those things that he remembered the most for whatever reason.
I can't even tell you what my palm looks like.
No, I can't either. But I think that there was just like this idea with, okay, that kind of being this important thing for him, and then then the Reverend's secretary being like, yeah, but your palm's weird. Like, I've never seen anything like that. It's really distinctive and uncommon, which is maybe why he remembered it more.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know what a normal palm pattern. I don't really notice the lines in a palm, but whatever.
I don't, but clearly palm readers do.
I mean, obviously the point of this is that your future is weird compared to everyone else, and that's why your palm is different.
Yeah.
But
it was a bit of an on-the-nose scene that it felt like, here's the plots that's going to come up for at least this season.
Yeah. All right, so I think we'll have the spoiler warning just so we can talk about the rest of the episode and some of the specifics. So
Can we start? Go on.
Spoilers from this point on. What did you want to say?
Can we start with the weird ghost scene?
Do you mean the sort of stalker type scene where there's like someone looking at her through the window from outside during the rain?
Which we learn later is Jamie, like from context of seeing him later in the episode.
Sure, yeah.
And it like, because it plays it the whole time in the present. This obviously before we've gone to the past. In the present, it's like it plays it like a ghost. Like he's there. He's this weird, hooded figure, kind of, watching in the window. Her husband goes up, and he vanishes. And he is gone, and no one else seems to see it. And it plays it weird. It just seems such a strange thing because it's like, where's this going to be followed up on? Like, why is this kind of happening here now?
Well, that's kind of one of the intriguing things, I suppose, is like there's more of a long game perhaps with this, and like some of the mythology of the show, which you might get into, is like exactly how does this work? How is he kind of here? Is this more to do with the rituals and the magic of like the Celts that are doing stuff up here? Because they're I could never have told you where they were. It was Inverness. It turned out to be when they actually started saying the name of the place. But they, because they witnessed this kind of like ritual where there's like a bunch of the women are like got candles in their arms and not their arms, sorry, in their hands, not their arms, and they're dancing around kind of like it's kind of a vaguely Stonehenge style area, right? They're smaller than that, but
it's Samhain, it's, pagan Halloween.
Yeah. And there's, that's what they're saying is that the next night there's going to be a Halloween like festival, yeah, party
parade,
thing.
feast.
And they see this kind of like, and I say ritual. I mean, maybe ritual's not the right word. Maybe more of a.
I mean, it is a ritual.
It is a ritual. I feel like
there's no like sacrifice or anything like that. There's no chanting. It's like a dance almost.
Yeah,
like
did you like
a choreographed dance?
Did you like the effect they put on it? So the candles were like they had like a trail as they were moving.
I thought it. I don't know if I liked it necessarily, but it really stood out. It felt otherworldly, which I think was the point, right? It felt unique.
Yeah. And of course, it's when she goes back to that the next later that day or the next day, whatever it is, where she ends up touching the rock in the middle, and that's kind of where it just fades to black. And she talks about how it reminded her of being in this car accident, which I'm sure maybe we'll get more of a backstory to this as well, because she just sort of briefly mentions it when she's just using it to describe the feeling of weightlessness as she was falling off a bridge in a car.
It's quite a specific thing as well. It's not just weightlessness. It was being asleep and then waking up in a car that's like crashing and kind of, and being upside down. So it's the weightlessness and the confusion of like kind of not knowing where you are and what's happening at the same time. Yeah,
I don't get the feeling that we're going to be tackling these like parts or these questions too often, too quick. But it does feel like they do have like an intention to get to it at some point. It might not even be till the very end of the show, but it does feel like there'll be something at some point that they've got something in mind for this. It's not just magic portal blue, she's there.
Yeah, it's definitely the sort of thing that feels like, and This will sound really generic when I just say it like this, but this can be, rewarding when it's built to. But the sort of thing where over, however many seasons, she's kind of looking into it, discovering and kind of figuring it out. And by the time there's an opportunity to maybe return, she'll choose not to, kind of just stay because she's, this is her life now. Like, and that's, maybe it doesn't even have to be the ending. That could be an ending, but that could be still like a choice halfway through potentially.
I don't know, the idea that Jamie goes to watch her, if like, whatever context that this is his ghost, or maybe I would be more inclined to say it's less like he's a ghost and like maybe he's like an echo in time, like
he's somehow a time apparition himself.
Yeah, like somehow he's found a way to come here for just a minute to watch, and then he just goes back to his own time period. Like that's what the disappearing is. It's not that he's a ghost; it's that he's snapping back in whatever way, shape, or form that this is happening. Like the fact that he's coming to see her like this would almost imply to me that she like something bad does happen to her, or she does go back to her present day, and this is just him getting, this is why he's coming to see her, because he can't see her in his own time period anymore.
It could be like there's sort of like speculations like it could be that, it could be just a case of maybe at some point they do kind of discover, okay, this is how we can travel back, and this is just a part of the experiment, and she's an anchor, and he's gone through time, and and it's not a permanent thing, but he's stepped into the his future for a few minutes.
Yeah, it's interesting though. When she does sort of arrive and she gets back up, and she's she's in the same area, obviously she's not teleported anywhere, but she looks over to like, and it's like things look a bit different, and then later on she looks over where the city's supposed to be or the town's supposed to be, and she's like, where's the lights? There's nothing there. And that's kind of like the real dawning of like, because she sees like some people chasing each other and like firing a gunshot, and she's she's attacked even, but it's like, okay, it's like, what's the rational explanation for this? There's some sort of like costume like recreation going on, or she even questions in the narration like, is there a film being made here and I've stumbled onto a set or something, a shooting location? And it's these are logical,
pretty reasonable things.
Yeah, like honestly, they're shooting a movie here is probably the first thing I'd maybe think maybe it was, obviously, yeah, after a while you'd be like, where's the crew, where's the cameras and shit, but when you just get a glimpse of someone running about in an old-timey costume, you're like, oh, it's something
believable, yeah. And especially there's the history of the area that they talk about how they're celebrating this saint's feast day.
It's a reason for costumes, yeah.
Maybe this is part of their traditions, because when they get there, it's like this whole thing. Oh, there's lamb's blood all over the doors. This is weird, and they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's just local custom. So maybe this is just something they do at this time of year.
I wonder if Inverness still does that.
I don't know, but I could buy it. It seems like a weird place.
I'm going to assume not. Maybe like some old parts of the town will maybe do it, but maybe not.
Yeah, and I think this is like a village outside Inverness, right? Because it's probably Inverness by now. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure Inverness has grown considerably since 1945.
Yeah, but at the time, they're in the village and they're looking out at Inverness, which is the lights. So they're not quite in the city at this point.
That's true. It's a small village that's doing the blood in the doors. It's not the city itself, I think. So,
which is still possible then, right?
Yeah, possibly.
A little suburb in Inverness, just get the lamb's blood out.
I'll go on a trip and investigate around Halloween. See,
Deirdre, go slaughter the lamb, please.
Yeah, so she runs very quickly into her husband's ancestor, obviously played by the same actor, and that's how we know. And like, I appreciated that she thought, she's like thought it was him at first, because
what are you doing in that outfit?
Because sometimes it's this thing where like you have the same actor playing like the father or an ancestor or whatever, and the characters don't acknowledge it, and it's kind of like, it does take you out of it a little bit. No, acknowledge that he looks just like him. Come on. And she does, but she quickly realizes with his body language, the way he's looking at her, oh, you're not my husband, you're not Frank. And he very quickly threatens her and then tries to rape her. That's like within the first minute, that's what he tries to do, and it's that's when like the Scottish guy comes in and
and it is played as like this pretty horrific moment.
Oh yeah. And it gives you immediately like, oh, this time is like severe. Like this is like this is dangerous.
And it's, hey, these English, because he's like like the leader of the English in this area. He's clearly not a nice guy, right? Despite we've spent all episode up to this point with her husband going, hey, it's super fascinating. Look, he was here. He was collecting taxes. He was doing all these things. He was hunting down the rebels. And then it's like, yeah, no, he was a dick.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. Like for a moment, I was thinking like, wouldn't he hear her accent and think, oh, what's one of like my countrywomen doing here? And this time, where there's a clear divide between England and Scotland, I thought, wouldn't he hear the accent and like question that? But no, he's just very threatening and doesn't care. Maybe he doesn't really care about the accent and still assumes she's Scottish for whatever reason. I don't know.
Maybe he's just, why would there be an English woman here right now?
Yeah, so he doesn't care. Yeah, the accent's irrelevant to him. I don't know, but like, you would almost think that like that would be the safer place for her, would be at least in England, where if there's a conflict between the two places. But that's not the case at all. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not like the Scottish clan that she ends up with. Some of them clearly make a bit of like, oh, maybe we could try out that theory if she's a whore or not, kind of thing. And the leader, of course, is a bit more honourable. He's like, no, like there'll be no raping in my presence, or whatever he says. Like, he makes that very clear. So McTavish, like, yes, or what's the actor's name? Mackenzie, like Dougal Mackenzie, also super Scottish sounding.
Yeah,
Dougal Mackenzie.
Yeah.
But he he's dead set against that, but he's very stern with it though. He's like, like we're moving soon, keep up, like blah blah blah. He's not sugarcoating things. It just so happens that Jamie is the guy who's injured in his arm. They need to put his arm back into place, and they're about to do it, and she looks over and she's like, no, don't do it like that, you'll break his goddamn arm. And she immediately says, no, you have to do this first, and she does it herself. And like, obviously, like there's notice in this, and she's like, we have to put it in a sling, we have to do this. And it's the first instance of like, Jamie of course feels a bit of a bond because she's helping him out. Maybe Mackenzie's got a little bit of respect, just a little seed of it starting to.
There is, because it's during this point where she has for a sling. She's like, some cloth, belt someone, and they're all just laughing. Because I think she says, fetch me.
Yeah, she doesn't ask for it. She says, do it.
Yeah, she says, fetch me a cloth or a belt. And it's two of the guys. I think two of the ones who are like, oh, maybe we should test Abby if she's a whore. I like, oh, fetch me. Oh, and just laughing at Mackenzie, just like, just do it. Give me your belt now.
Yeah, he's not too pleased.
He's taking it pretty seriously.
But of course, she ends up raiding with Jamie, so they're kind of snug together. He's wrapping her, his blanket around her as well. So it's very intimate. It's a very intimate kind of position to be in. And he ends up collapsing at one point. When they've been raiding for a bit. And I think it was funny. I didn't see it coming actually that they were going to, like, the place they were going was the castle that they were visiting in the 1945 section.
That makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense, but I didn't see it coming, and I thought it was a nice little way to show, oh wait, they were traveling around so quickly because they had a car before, and like this is how long it takes on horseback. Like it takes like 2 days to get from, this site where she woke up.
Yeah, it took them like all night. Yeah.
So I thought that was a neat little touch to again show the differences and like just how much of what feels like a short distance when you've got vehicles all of a sudden is this trek, this long journey. But yeah, it's when he collapses and she has to clear the wound because they get into a bit of a fight. There's like a whole thing. I was talking. I called it Scotland's Vasquez Rock because it looked kind of similar to that rock that always pops up in Star Trek.
Okay, yeah.
A lot of movies shoot around it in in California, but early on, like her husband says, "Oh, that rock's like a really good." The Englishman used to go up there and use it as an ambush spot because it was a very good spot. It looked down from all sides.
You could see all directions from the top, and it's like and hiding it, like, which makes sense, right?
Yeah, and when they're raiding and she sees that again in the past, she's like, "Oh
like, shit,
that there might be ambush like up there," and so they sort of act accordingly, and they're able to like.
I do appreciate they were suspicious. They're like, "Why do you think there's an ambush?" English woman thinking there's an ambush. What do you know?
But sure enough, they're able to like deal with it because of that, and it's like okay. And again, it's maybe another reason why maybe they should trust her. Like maybe she's not out to get them, kind of thing. But Jamie gets shot during all this, and that's why he kills over on the road. And I say road, it's they're on horseback.
Dirt path.
Yeah. When I say on the road, I just mean on the sense that you're on the road to somewhere, not that there's physically a road. But that's what she's asking for the alcohol. Well, that's what she finally says that they understand, and they're very excited about it. But
like, oh yeah, we got plenty of that.
But
the Scottish, of course they do.
Oh yeah, because the English in this time period had less booze.
They might have done.
Need we remind the audience which one of us regularly gets drunk on the TV news on a weekly basis?
I've never been drunk on the TV news. Not because of the TV news. I've been drunk once or twice, and then we've recorded the TV news.
So let's remind everyone that I have never had a drink of alcohol in my life. And what are you drinking right now?
The water of life.
looks very whiskey-esque to me from this.
Yeah, that's what the water of life is.
All right.
That's what whiskey means.
I hope it's Scotch, just for to be on point.
It actually is.
Is it? Oh, nice, very nice.
It is, yes.
Very good.
Nothing special, but it is Scotch.
Yes, on brand, on topic for the episode, for the show, even. Yeah, so she patches him up, disinfects the wound, because that's the thing, she says disinfect the wound, and they're like, disinfect? What are you on about?
And then she's like, right, clean cloth, bandages, come on. And they're all like, what? What are you asking for? What are you doing? It's just like rip part of a skirt off.
Oh, God. you know what? I am so glad I wasn't born in the past, because I mean, there's obviously so many reasons why you should be glad of that, but just how unhygienic everything is like near the top of the list.
Yeah.
It just really is. But aye, so yeah, the episode ends with them arriving at this castle, where there's more people, obviously. So we'll get to see how she interacts maybe with other women in the time period, because there'll be some there. Maybe people will be suspicious about who she is. Maybe some of that, I don't know, like if there's higher up the ranks compared to Mackenzie, per se, but maybe some higher ups won't like her.
Clearly the leader of this this little, like, war band, so to speak. But that doesn't mean he's the leader of the clan in general. And also, yes, clearly he's like older than a lot of the others there, but that doesn't necessarily mean he's in charge still.
Yeah, I feel like there's probably going to be like a group of leaders at the castle or something that we're going to deal with, or maybe maybe one in particular, whatever the system is back in the day. It was interesting. They were bouncing around English and Gaelic a little bit occasionally.
They would throw in the odd like Gaelic phrases.
Yeah. I don't know how accurate that is to the time period. Like, was this a case of Scottish people could all speak English, but like there was still a lot of Gaelic kind of like thrown around, or if this is just because it's a TV show and it's like, well, obviously we're going to be in English most of the time when we need to be understood, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know in Scotland, because obviously in England, at least with the upper classes, you'd have had them all knowing Norman French and English from like, the 1100s to like the 15, 16, maybe even 1700s. Like that's just what they would all know both.
Yeah. It's not. For anyone who doesn't understand present day Scotland, obviously English is the main language. There are some areas up north that speak Gaelic, but most people in the bigger areas of like the central belt, all the cities and all that, like unless you specialize and specifically learn it because you do like broadcasts in that language or something, like it's not something that most people know. I don't know a single word of Gaelic.
No, I mean it's the same in Welsh, right? Like even though all their like road signs are in both English and Welsh, just because they have to be. There are very few people, if any, in Wales that don't speak English.
Sure,
there might be like a handful.
Yeah, but the difference is far more people in Wales speak Welsh than
they will speak it, but probably not fluently.
Sure, yeah, but like there was never it was never a question growing up if we'd get taught any like Scots Gaelic. Like it was never even like entered into the conversation. Like just we all speak English and that's just what it is.
The superior language.
I mean, I don't want to learn another one, so I'll agree. The one I know already is the superior language. I agree.
Very useful language.
I've never been. I mean, it's a stupid language in a lot of ways. There's a lot of.
Oh no, it's a mess of a language. Like it is a awful language. It has so many stupid rules.
Don't get me wrong. I am glad though we don't have gendered words, because I hated that about German when I had to learn a bit of German.
I am so obviously we took, as I was mentioning there, we took a lot from the French when the Normans come over into our language, but we have a lot of like Danish in our language as well from like the Viking stuff.
Bit of Latin as well, right?
Yeah, that kind of comes via the French. Though.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Because that's like a romantic language, but you've got that they're related to like the Italian. So yeah, there's a lot in there. It's such a hodgepodge of a language where everyone that came over here were like, yeah, we'll take half your language. That'll do. We'll throw it all in together. People will get used to it. Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And now it's a mess.
Yeah, that's fair.
But it's not gendered, so it's good.
Oh, it's such a pain. Like having to remember which nouns are like, so in German you have die, der, or das for I think the, right? It's been a long time, so I don't remember that well, but that's the, right? It's either die, der, or das, depending on if the word you're then going to say is a male word, a female word, or a neutral word. So you'd have to like say the right one for whatever the noun was.
Why are words? Why does it matter?
I mean, it doesn't, and inherently also, like I remember thinking, like, is some of this sexist because like are certain words that you associate with the traditional like women's role, is that inherently a feminine word just because of that reason?
I didn't do much to my French, which is also gendered.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I couldn't speak any French right now, but I remember thinking at the time of learning it about that question. Is it? But then I don't remember it lining up. that like inherently like, oh, this seems like a masculine word because of it being, traditionally masculine, activities. It didn't seem to line up like that.
No, I agree. I definitely remember thinking there was the odd one that felt like it was like, why is this word male or female when it feels like it's more associated with the other gender? I don't know. It was. I don't know.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a tangent, but it's just the sort of thing that like I appreciate. I don't have to put up with.
Yeah. Thank God.
God. Anyway, so yeah, the first episode I think is pretty decent at what it's setting up. I think it feels relatively expensive. I never got the feeling like it was cheaping out. I mean, admittedly, yeah, it gets away with doing a lot of stuff in like the forest and stuff. So it's not like
it's the sort of thing where I will say typically I have critiques of STARZ shows in general. Being cheap is never, or at least feeling cheap is never really one of them.
No, that's fair.
It has the potential where it could feel cheaper as they go to more locations. Because right now we're in this small village. It's reusing a lot of locations between the two time periods and kind of just dressing them differently. But maybe once we start getting out into the wider world, it starts feeling like okay, we're on some sets here or there, as opposed to what we're doing in this episode.
Yeah, I was thinking it when it opened the 1945 section with the end of the war, and it's like there's this shot coming down showing all the hospital beds and all. There's like tons of people and extras and stuff. Like, yeah, it didn't feel like it was cheaping out on what it was doing to show it. And I think visually it looks like it's going for a distinct look all the time.
Speaking of its distinct look, during the flashback to the war, it's a very different look. It's like really desaturated.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if I necessarily like or dislike, but it's a stylistic choice. If they do keep these flashbacks going, you may maybe develop a preference, for or against it more as it goes on. But it definitely stood out as feeling immediately different with its palette.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't hate the first episode. I mean, it's entirely possible that I'll hate going from
the
here.
Next 7, yeah.
But I mean, it sounds like we're pretty happy to watch the next 7 at least, and do the first half of the season, and then after episode 8, we'll make the choice at that point. But I think we're doing the next 7 at the very least.
I agree. I suspect by the time we get to episode 8, it'll probably be pretty clear based off the previous conversations.
Sure. Yeah.
Already. Whether or not it's going to be, if it's a chore to get towards 8, you could be pretty sure we'll be giving up.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if it sort of sits in a place where it's really teetering on how we feel about episode 8 specifically. Like if we get through the first 7 and it's like, it's been
all
up and
depends
down.
On whatever cliffhanger they do at the end of episode 8.
I suspect either we'll generally feel like we're wanting to watch more or not wanting to watch more by the time we get there. But I'm definitely not unhappy about watching some more of this just now. So so we'll check out more Outlander. This will be up early a week on Patreon. We're at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV at the $5 tier. Just plug that quickly. But and then a week later for everyone else. But the plan is either Friday or Saturdays for this to go out every week. So look out for the next one. And if you are checking out the show for the first time, let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you've seen the show already, also let us know your thoughts on what we've pointed out or other thoughts you'd like to add. But obviously keep it spoiler free. Assume that not only us but everyone in the comments might have only watched up to this episode, and just sort of keep that rule throughout as we go. It's worked very well for us in other shows. So, but yeah, worth mentioning if you've just found us via this, go check out. Me and Connor are working through all the Star Treks pretty much. We started the original series in 2017, and we're currently on season 6 of Next Generation and just started Deep Space Nine. So if that sounds of interest, check out that. And we've got playlists of like tons of TV shows that we've reviewed together from the last several years. So go and check out some of those. I also do Babylon 5 with Tara, and we'll be replacing that with Quantum Leap when that's done. So just go and browse a little bit and check out MailFuzz Movies, where the movie podcasts live, over on the other YouTube channel. But yeah, that'll about do it though. Like, subscribe, ding the bell, all those things help out on YouTube, so please do them. But with that said, we'll see you next time. Me and the red coat here, or the ginger coat.
I checked just to check because earlier today I was wearing a red shirt, and I was like, wait, am I still wearing it?
Well, I might shop wearing tartan from here on out.
I think you should. You should commit to the part.
I don't own any tartan.
I will wear a red shirt when we record these, just if you do.
I'd have to go get like a tartan scarf or something, just to...
You could find some. Let's be honest. It's not going to be hard.
I don't know. There's a shortage, I think, on tartan.
Oh yeah, there's a tartan shortage.
I'll get a Bonnie Wee scarf or something. I'm just saying that word because they threw it around in the episode. It's not something that's used commonly in modern Scottish dialect, but
it was set in the 40s and older, so yeah.
It just means nice, basically, for anyone who doesn't know what it is. But yeah, there you go. That's the first episode of Outlander. Thank you very much for joining us. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?